Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Michelson, and today we're joined by Mark Carlson. Mark's a board-certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner who works with high-performance cronies to uncover their healing opportunities to build their health. Mark shares his inspiring story with us today of his journey with Crohn's disease and how he has overcome this incredible health challenge. He lets us in on what he's learned. Spoiler alert, what you eat does matter. And if we focus on building our health instead of fixing disease, the possibilities are endless. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Julie. Glad to be here.
I am so excited for this conversation. And you're bringing also the male perspective, which we were just talking about before I hit record, which I love because although the numbers, of women to men listeners, autoimmune strugglers, we need men in the conversation. So I'm really excited to have you here. I want
thanks.
Start by asking you to share your story with us. I know you have this incredible journey, and I'd like you to bring listeners along.
Yeah, sure. Well, my story, the theme through my story is this sense of having to care for my family. And it's taken me through, a few different careers, but more so given me the motivation, the desire, the need to actually, the male side of fixing it, it drew that out even more. And in my case, it actually worked out pretty well. So I started out my career as a counselor in a chemical dependency and mental health unit, and that worked out well. And I started having some odd issues, which eventually started being diagnosed as duodenal ulcers. And I kept that for off and on for maybe 5-7 years, and then ended up transitioning to another career. And that other career was fantastic, is fantastic, but it was highly stressful. I mean, in the sense of there was a lot of traveling, a lot of speaking to board members, to clients that were quite high status, I guess you'd say. And I knew I had to keep everything going. And in the meantime, the pain was starting to get worse. And as we were talking earlier, I had this kind of epiphany moment that I needed to get even more help after my wife started noticing that I was coming home late for work later and later and later. And eventually I broke down and told her, well, it's because I was at the ER, but not actually in the ER, in the parking lot at the ER, which she was like, that makes no sense. Yeah. So I was like, well, it does make sense because I'm trying to figure out this thing. I've had this stomach pain for quite a long time now, and I have seen a doctor, and they told me at the time, well, you don't want it to be Crohn's. And that's where I was kind of left at. That's a terrible way to leave it. So in the meantime, they're doing test after test, scopes up, scopes down, all the kind of stuff. And I'm pulling over into the ER parking lot after work because for some reason, like this, I could keep things together while I was at work, put on a good face. But after work, I guess the tension kind of relieves from the body, and the pain would start coming on, and these convulsions of pain would start going, and there's no way I could even drive, so I would pull over to the parking lot in the ER and lay in the back seat, get as close to the door as I could, just in case I passed out or something like that. I just didn't know what else to do, but I thought that it was not so bad to where I really needed to be in the ER. That's that kind of male mindset, I can fix it. I can take care of myself. Luckily, that stuff, I never went to the ER. Went to the ER or went to the hospital many other times later. But I didn't there. At that time, I was getting a bit of a handle on doing some A/B testing, with diets. And coming from the whole standpoint of back then, this was the early 2000s. So it was the food pyramid was the big thing, and so I would kind of work my way from the bottom to the top. Grains, and starchy vegetables and breads, and then kind of keep going up and very methodically figure out what hurt the worst. Pain was very much my leader as far as what I could do. And well, this with the telling my wife what was going on, that kind of made me think a little bit differently as well too.
Did you hear it as you said it?
Yes, that's it. I heard it as I said it. So, well, this sounds a bit crazy. So by that time, I actually had a physician, general physician, who actually still did specialize in digestive disorders, and he was one who said, "Well, you don't want it to be Crohn's." By that time, he already had scheduled me to see somebody else. So that kind of got me off of the proverbial couch to where I could see him. And so, of course, that sent down a whole nother path. More tests. And that GI said, well, I know what test I need to run. And it was a GI series. But insurance is going to make me run these others first. And so it was about another 6 months. 6 months of that where I'm having to pull over into the parking lot and just kind of wait for these pains to kind of subside. It seemed so strange. It would last for about 2 or 3 minutes, excruciating pain, and then like a release of endorphins for like 5 minutes. And it would do that for like 30 minutes to an hour or so. So, and I was also doing a bunch of, the typical medications. At the time, the biologics really weren't that big into everything, but steroids were. And I, at one of the times at work when we were in.
We're chiming in. They know all about steroids and biologics in this house.
I got them over here too. So I even went to one of the meetings after I was on about probably 6 months being on and off the steroids, prednisone in particular. A guy came up to me and said, "Are you Mark's older brother?" And he was dead serious. Yeah. And then he realized, as it's coming out of his mouth, wait a minute, this might actually be Mark. And you get that like moon face and that prednisone look where, oh, you just bloated and so that was, and I had many other side effects from the prednisone as well too. And the reason why I stayed on prednisone so long is they couldn't find anything else. We did Pentenza and a lot of other kind of medication would go on and off cycle, which is such a common story for people with Crohn's, just so crazy. And this whole time it's working toward a diagnosis of actual Crohn's. So about another 3 months of going through these tests the insurance company required, we did get to the GI series. And that's the test where you swallow the barium and you stand up. And for about 4 hours, you watch the barium go all the way down. And it's the most amazing test. It really is. And I could see it. It's like like you would see water or even like a syrup kind of going down a hose. And it looks really good until it got down to close to, right beside my navel. And then it went down to just like little veins and barely even that. And I could see right there, hey, there's something right there. Yeah, that's it. And I tell you, it's exactly where I'm feeling it. And he was right. That's exactly what it needed to be. Well, by that time, they found a lot of other things too. There was a stricture, so a place where it was just swollen so bad nothing could really hardly ever get through it, and that's where the pain really was. Well, and that was at the ileum, a classic place for Crohn's, the terminal ileum, the end of your small digestive system, right before it goes into the large digestive tract. So there was ulcers below and ulcers above, and so they said I had severe Crohn's, and I would need a lot of surgery. And it was looking like after the first surgery, there may be 2 or 3 other ones after that as well too. So of course, it's spinning in my mind. It's like, it's impossible. There's no way I can take off work for surgery. I mean, I gotta pay the bills. I gotta raise my family. I mean, how does anybody ever do this? So by that time, I was still going through a very methodical process of just diet. And very interesting things I was finding out that is, of course, starting out with the bottom of the food pyramid. The absolute worst thing that gave me pain was brown rice. And that's what I was told to eat rice, eat potatoes. That would hurt so bad, and it was repeatable because I did it twice. I couldn't do it anymore. Yeah. After I would do that, it would just, I mean, I couldn't, I would be wiped out for the whole day, just a little bit of brown rice. And so one of the last things I even tried was just doing straight like red meat. Because like red meat, that's like the worst thing. It's hard to digest, right? Well,
so they say.
Yeah, so they say. And it's changing a little bit now, I guess. But I could, within 3 days of eating nothing but meats and maybe a little bit of cruciferous vegetables, but mostly just meat, I could be pain-free. Wow. Which actually made no sense to me or any of the doctors. So I went, the last recommendation was for me to have surgery and have a fair amount of my bowel taken out. I was pretty confident at this point that I could control at least the pain, that I wanted to see what would happen. So I went to a specialist. I have a specialist at the GI. This was in Atlanta. And he had they said he had some very experimental new ways to treat Crohn's. And I was like, oh, all right, this is great. I have these month-long of data, even stuff written down about how my diet, and I can get to the point to where I can have no pain. And I explained this whole process to him. And he looked at me and said, that has nothing to do with it. So,
unbelievable. I knew I've been waiting for it. I was like, did anybody tell you, it has nothing to do with what you eat?
And that was demoralizing, really, in some ways, because I kind of put him up on a pedestal because he was 3rd level up of seeing a GI person that, hey, this guy really knows what he's talking about. And so his recommendation was this they were biologics, is what it was. Mm-hmm. That were coming out, and that was his recommendation. And I got a whole bunch of biologics and went to the refrigerator. Well, it was a bit demoralizing, but at the same time, it kind of lit a fire on me. And I went back to the surgeon, the second surgeon, I had two people, at second opinion on surgery as well too. So the second surgeon I went back to and asked him, said, I showed him my GI series test. I actually went to the lab and said, hey, can you give me that test after watching it go down and showing that nothing, showing right where stuff was? And they gave it to me. By the way, anybody can get that. I mean, if you have some medical records, you can get any of the stuff. And they put it onto a DVD.
Yeah,
that's right. So I took it to that surgeon and said, you see this part right here? I mean, I see this. I mean, I know you do. Can you just take out that part, just that one part? Because we talked about it, and I knew that was not just an inflamed part of my intestines. It was scarred. It was scarred where it's hard. So I thought realistically, there's no way that's going to heal, or at least I'm not going to be able to deal with it long enough to heal.
right.
So after a little while, he said, yeah, I'll just take out just that one part. And that was the moment right then where I was like, I just realized I bargained with my surgeon. And I effectively did that with my GI specialist of the specialist as well too, because I kind of ended up firing him. Not that I recommend anybody firing their doctors.
Actually, I think sometimes we do need to fire a doctor and find somebody who's more aligned. So I say, good for you.
Well,
did he, I'm just curious. I have so many questions, but we'll circle back. But I want to know, in that bargaining, did he say, if I only take this part out, you're going to come back for more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he did.
Just curious.
He totally, but he expected that from the beginning anyway.
Right.
So if we're talking about,
so you're saving potentially feet of intestines by not jumping right in.
That's right. So, so long story, we did take out about 7 inches, the terminal ileum, which wasn't too bad compared to, it was probably going to be a few feet before that. And in different places as well too. This was just in one place. So I thought the healing might be a little bit easier as well too. And I had this newfound sense of, hey, I'm in control. I can make these decisions and let's just see what happens. I know I can go pain-free, or at least pretty close to pain-free for a while by just controlling what I eat. There's got to be something there. There's got to be. And so I did that. And, I ended up over the course of, it probably took a total of 5 years and working more and more diet. I ended up doing the SCD diet, which is the specific carbohydrate diet. I'm sure you're aware of. Elaine Gosh, she, a biochemist, did a fabulous job of coming down to a methodology of figuring out which carbohydrates are easier to digest based on being a complex carbohydrate versus a disaccharide versus a monosaccharide. So complex carbohydrates had to be broken down to disaccharides. Disaccharides have broken down to monosaccharides, and then it can go into your bloodstream. We, as people with Crohn's, UC, IBD, just general digestive issues, have a problem with that step going all the way down. And frankly, a lot of people may have it as well too. It's just difficult to digest some of the complex carbohydrates. And that SCD diet formed the basis of me going from basically kind of like a meat into something like this. And that got me, 60% of the way there. I kept going a little bit further, and figuring out if I dropped out some of the anti-nutrients out of the carbohydrates as well too, like the oxalates, the gluten, and those type that actually rob your body of nutrients along the way. So I ended up with this food list of the SCD foods minus the anti-nutrient foods, and prioritized based off of blood sugar and insulin response as well too. So I ended up having this big long spreadsheet. And I found out that, well, it took me about 60% of the way there, taking out the anti-nutrients and then dropping down into ketosis gave me the performance that I really needed. So it takes me back to where I want to not just be able to provide for my family, but I want to perform really well.
Right.
I mean, I was in a high pressure job. I didn't have a choice but to perform well. and I did extremely well. I dropping down into ketosis after going through the series of the SCD and everything made a huge difference. And at that point, I started not only just getting better, but being better than I was even before in the past. And ever since then, that's been about 10, 15 years ago. Ever since then, when I drop out of that kind of methodology, the sluggishness starts coming back. And I mean, I was diagnosed with narcolepsy at one point because just being so
fatigued.
I mean, I just couldn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
And part of that was the side effects of the medications as well too, going on and off. But just having a gut in a terrible, just couldn't absorb nutrients well, and a blended bush border. I mean, it couldn't produce enzymes. I was in terrible shape, and so it leads to all kind of issues as well too.
Amazing. And for those of you that are listening on audio, I would say he looks like Mark's younger brother. Certainly not Mark's older brother.
Oh, and today's my birthday. I am 52 today.
Happy birthday. I have got a year on you, but I know what it's like to feel younger in your 50s than you do in your 40s. So it's pretty darn fantastic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. I feel younger now than I did in my 30s. This one, when everything was going on, I was in my 30s.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh man, crazy. Our story tracks in so many kind of ways. It is amazing. I mean, that's got to be inspiring to other folks. That
which is why we're here. This is why we do what we do, right?
Yeah,
so I want to circle all the way back, and
go ahead.
And I believe I do know the answer to this, but I want listeners to hear it as well. You started playing with diet fairly early on when you were like, "No, I got to fix this," and you alluded to it. But this was you looking for a solution. This was not doctors saying, "Hey, you have a gut issue. Food might be involved." Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I was told by not just doctors, but pretty much everybody, there's really nothing. The diet is just not even a course to go. But I didn't have a choice, and this is important. I don't know if I would have had the intelligence. Maybe. I mean, I was into nutrition before all this.
Sure.
I've been a personal trainer in the 90s, and that was a big part of nutrition and all, but that was, like I say, food pyramid type stuff,
right? Misinformation.
Not this. Yeah. I mean, totally opposite of what I ended up doing. But
it's always
so where I was like
shocking. Well, this idea of you can have this major gut issue. And we're going to clarify this. Is Crohn's an autoimmune disease? Is it not an autoimmune disease? I still am shocked with any autoimmune like issue that doctors aren't, addressing food, but especially when it relates to the gut. I beyond don't eat gluten if you have celiac. That's it. That's all they say. It is truly unbelievable to me.
It is. And what I was going to say is I was forced into going down this path purely because of pain. I didn't have a choice. So when I got to the point of really it was meat and fat that I felt the best off of. And that went against everything I knew. I said, oh, my cholesterol, I'm going to have a heart attack. I mean, all these kind of things start going through your head, but I didn't care. Because I could survive. I mean, I could do my job.
I remember when I first went keto, and it too had been a process of eliminating things, and I'd been on a low fat diet my whole life. So, no surprise that finally having high quality fats, just turned cells on in my body. And I remember my GP saying to me, "Oh my gosh, my cholesterol had always been high," which makes sense. I was inflamed. It's an inflammatory molecule. So
Exactly.
makes total sense.
That's the key.
But when I first went keto, it did go even higher, and she was panicking. And that was exactly what I said to her. I said, "I feel well. I'm not changing a thing. Like if I die, if the high cholesterol kills me tomorrow, which I now know was never going to, fine. I
Exactly.
feel well." And sure enough, without changing a thing, just giving my body more time, it all came right back to, came down actually lower than it had ever been in my life. But it's just remarkable. You did, I joke, I've said it on the podcast before. I used to think I was smart, but I believed my doctors when they said nothing you can do. And so I love that you were like, "Hey, nobody else was fixing this. I had to do it." And I was thinking about, I know, because I've talked to people with Crohn's and UC, and they are told, just eat gentle foods like rice and carbs. And I think of even as a young mom, when my kids got diarrhea, shocker that my son who has celiac used to get diarrhea when he was little. And they would always say, brat diet. Like, why are we doing that to our children? Why are we giving them rice and toast when their guts are inflamed? It's wild.
Yeah. And we're completely, the lifestyle we typically live takes us right into doing all that as well too. And the processed foods, oh man, the processed foods are, if there's any one evil out of the food, it's processed foods. And we're constantly bombarded with the ads. I mean, you go to work, you're driving to work, and you pass 20 billboards about a filet of fish sandwich, and your mouth starts watering because it really does look good. So it's crazy. It's like we have to change so much in today's lifestyle in order for us to actually have a healthy lifestyle. I mean, 200 years ago, it was so much easier to live healthier than it is
that's
now.
what it was. Now it's like swimming upstream and fighting a fight. And it is, I do try to always give the grace of, it's so much easier for somebody like myself or you that had such severe negative consequences to living, eating the standard American diet. And so, for me, there's no, you're not going to eat rice. I'm not going to eat gluten, like there's no way I would do that to myself versus someone who hasn't really connected all those dots yet, or somebody who would like to prevent illness, but, can't feel that direct impact. Talk to us a little bit about, you said we're going to connect Crohn's and autoimmune, and I again sometimes think I'm educated. I'm like, I thought Crohn's was an autoimmune condition. So let's talk about that. Explain to us, what do they know now?
Yeah, well, it has been classified as an autoimmune condition for a very long time, and in many cases it still is, but it's starting to change. So a quick refresher of your immune system is, you have the two parts. You have the adaptive immune system that we're used to. We come in contact with a new virus, a new bacteria, something like that we don't, our body has not seen before. So in order to develop some kind of resistance against it, it creates what's the word? Antibodies. It creates antibodies for these. And we can see this when this whole system of creating antibodies and being able to fight a disease goes haywire into the autoimmune issues. So celiac, has an antibody counterpart. Rheumatoid arthritis has an antibody counterpart. So these autoimmunes are good.
Yep.
Hashimoto's does.
And I always say this is it's a good system. It's just, as you mentioned, when it goes
is
awry, that we end up with autoimmune. It's when we start attacking self.
Right, it starts attacking itself. Well, the funny thing is with Crohn's, there has been no antibody found for Crohn's, and they don't expect there will be. So the other part of the immune system is the innate immune system, the immune system that we're born with. You know, when we're very small, we can have a cut and it gets a little bit inflamed and heals up. Well, that's the immune system we're born with. It knows how to deal with that. Well, just like any other genes, it can go awry as well too. And when the innate immune system goes awry, it's more systemic. So Crohn and systemic means it inflames anywhere in the body. So what they're starting to call Crohn's is an autoinflammatory disease,
Okay.
more so than an autoimmune. So it does the inflammation,
Mm-hmm.
and but it doesn't do it. It does focus it in the gut, but as Crohn's is known to expand more than say UC does. I had it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And but it was concentrated in the terminal ileum, which is very, very typical of a Crohn's. But if I look back, my parents told me that they went to it was shortly after well, I think their first big vacation with me when I was young and around 2 years old. They had to leave, and this was thousands of miles away. They finally had to leave and come back home because I had so many ulcers in my mouth. And, you know, just scream as a little kid, just couldn't take that kind of stuff. And I remember as a child, I don't know, maybe even up through teenagers, I would on a regular basis get ulcers like in my mouth as well too. So that kind of shows where Crohn's does expand. And it's also, I kind of call, I'm starting to see Crohn's as more like as a cascade disease.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly after I was diagnosed, I started having my physician ask me, well, do I have any arthritis?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, no, I don't really have any. And they kept asking me that. And what I found out was I started developing the antibodies for arthritis as well, too. Luckily, it hasn't expressed itself in any kind of way that I know of. But it's that it goes back to that concept of Crohn's makes more sense as an autoinflammatory rather than autoimmune because it works with the innate immune system. It's a disruption of the innate immune system where it attacks itself, and it's kind of more generalized. It may start in the gut, but it can easily trigger other autoimmune systems, autoimmune diseases as well too.
So
Which is
mechanism of action is
Mhm.
different. Expression is similar because most autoimmune
Exactly.
conditions also it's systemic inflammation. It's RA isn't just joint pain. It can affect the heart. It can affect Okay, so
Yeah.
so I love that understanding of okay, this is a different process kind of going on behind the scenes. You are you focus on not disease management, right? You were trying to shift the focus from disease management to building health.
That's
Let's
right.
talk about that. Share with us this approach of, if you really want to solve the problems, you have to build health.
Yeah, I kind of say now, let the doctors worry about your disease, and our job is to worry about our health. And they're two totally separate things. We put this health, this what kind of diet do I need to do, what kind of exercise to do on our doctors, which is completely crazy. And they don't even want that either. That's not their responsibility. But we always say that. Well, talk to your doctor before starting this exercise program, or talk to your doctor about what do you need to eat. But they don't want that, and they have no training in that. And I started realizing that with some of my experiences about the doctor saying my diet has nothing to do with it, even though I went from pain to no pain. And and so I went down, for me, it was a path of going, what kind of diet is right for me, what type, how is my rest, like, am I sleeping well at night, and am I doing the right exercise? Am I actually doing the right kind of exercise, which I was not at the time. I was doing a lot of the, at the time it was kind of like sprinting, hit, that kind of stuff. Swapped it all over to doing just resistance training. I could recover so much better from that, and it had the benefit of helping me sleep better at night as well too. Um, and a lot of the stress reduction side of things was really big. And for me, what that turns into now is not just the stress that we kind of always talk about, like the emotional stress of things or just stressful situations, but the hidden stressors. And so I kind of had an avoidance of doing tests after all the poking
It's
and prodding that's
fair.
been done. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it gets kind of scary after a while. But I dug deep into functional lab testing, and that opened up a whole new world about what to look for. So then, instead of focusing on the disease of Crohn's, I would look at things like, well, are my hormones balanced? My cortisol to DHEA ratio, what's that? In my immune system, my secretory IgA, how is that? My digestion, this is one of the things that for me, I is a leading indicator. I look at things like indican, and it's a marker that shows how well protein is being broken down and absorbed in the gut. So if protein does not, it ends up putrefying, and then you get this indican release that you can test for. So, I'm starting to look for all these kind of markers, sluggish liver, all these kind of things. So I start working on this oxidative stress. I start working on all these kind of things. And so what I do now is kind of hit at it very hard, very comprehensively at first to find out exactly what's going on in my body right now. Not just Crohn's, not just the GI, not just my microbiome, but all those other things I mentioned as well too. And it gives me a very clear sense of all the things I can actually work toward to build my health up, going forward. And that has made all the difference in the world. So I can map out going forward, what I need to do on my diet, my rest, my exercise, my supplementation, the stress, to relieve those hidden stressors, internally as well too. So
Sure.
So that's kind of how it's taken me, and that's actually not even looking at Crohn's anymore. And
Right.
I haven't looked at Crohn's in 10 years, and it's done wonderful
Love it.
for me.
I love it. And this is functional medicine, right? This is what we do
Yeah.
when we all need these systems, we need these building blocks. And when we look for those deficits and roadblocks really to healing, because the body is designed to heal. And when you're expressing something like Crohn's or RA or whatever it is, you've got roadblocks. And so, yes, we need to remove the roadblock, but like you said, we need to build the health and get those systems working beautifully. And then, we're not using names of diagnoses. We're just people creating wellness. That's the beauty of it. It's
Exactly.
amazing.
Well said.
It's amazing. So do you have I think I know the answer just from what you had said, but is there a specific diet that you recommend, or is this an individualized thing?
Well, short answer is individualized thing. The diet that I end up kind of doing a default, and it's not really so much a diet as a list that I referenced before. I call it a specific keto food list. So it is that specific carbohydrate diet, and then taking away some of the histamines, the oxalates, that kind of stuff, and normalizing it for low blood sugar, low insulin reaction foods as well too. And that's kind of my go-to list, but it's not really a full-on diet. You can do it so many different ways. Matter of fact, I keep it in a spreadsheet so I can sort by, well, what affects the blood sugar the most, what's the most histamine, and I can go down the line as well too, or just carbs, calories, that kind of stuff. So it's a very nice utility type sheet.
Amazing.
So
The data geek.
yeah, oh yeah. Well, that's been a lot of my career is in technology, so it kind of, the engineering side comes out when that goes in. So yeah, so I guess that's kind of my go-to. But if I'm talking generally, what I always recommend is more of a Paleolithic, hunter-gatherer type diet.
Good
And
start.
I go for more higher fat as well too.
Yep.
We all still have this fat phobia,
Sure.
which is probably the thing that is one of the biggest roadblocks that I found for most everybody getting into a diet that actually will get you, healthy. I mean, that's probably one of the big things. So that when I work with people, that's probably one of the bigger things I have to work with. It takes a long time to kind of break through that.
That's decades of programming. We all need to. I remember when I first started, I understood my brain, like logically and scientifically, why I needed the fat. And I just remember gagging on it in the beginning. I don't know. And I can tell you, it has been ages since I've had a boneless, skinless chicken breast. Thank goodness. I had enough of those through the first part of my life, for sure.
Yeah, so once you break through.
Oh, yeah. No, you don't. You can't go back. You just, when you feel your body come alive, that wellness that you're talking about. Again, it's now, you don't want to go. You don't want to go the other way. So what is one step that listeners can take today to start to improve their health or start to build wellness for themselves?
One step.
I know it's a trick question. It's tough.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I knew you were going to ask that as well, too.
I know, but it's so hard to pick one. One thing, just to start to move the needle, something they can do.
I think the main thing is we have this, we're told to set goals. And when this airs, it'll probably be around New Year's time, right? New Year's resolution. You have New Year's resolution, to start working out every day, or have a New Year's resolution to eat better, whatever that happens to mean. Those are goals, right? And I think that's the wrong path to take. And if I would have one thing to say is stop with the goals and start with the building a process, a system. So instead of, I'm going to go work out every day, it kind of sets you up for failure because you're not going to do it right. I mean, that's what always happens. But think about what's going on in your life that is conducive to working out every day or eating well every day. So the podcast, when you have something coming in your ear that's talking about health, talking about working out, and it might be a specific thing that you like as well too, it starts building that kind of constant, instead of the billboards coming at you every day, you're starting to have other things coming. So you're thinking about, how does my life need to be structured so I can do these things? Not this goal of I want to work out every day. How can you structure your life? So when you're going to work and you have all these billboards coming at you, take the countryside. Yeah, it's going to take longer for you to get to work, but maybe you need to go to bed a little hour early anyway. So you start thinking about, well, how can I structure my life rather than having goals to these specific things? How can I structure my life to where it's a healthy lifestyle going forward? That takes longer, but it's way more sustainable to keep as well too. Yeah. So you're going to bed an hour early. You're taking the countryside to work. you're seeing pastures and nice moving cows instead of the play of fish billboards coming at you. And you're getting these podcasts coming in that start to talk about health, start to talk about exercise, new ways of doing it. So what you're doing is you're building this loop of reinforcing healthy lifestyles. And that is what starts really making you have the big changes going forward. So I guess that's a lot. I know you wanted something short and quippy, but
I will sum it up for you so that it's the one thing, which what I heard you say was, instead of setting the goals that we never stick with anyway, really take the time to create that system to build the healthy lifestyle. And like you said,
that's right.
You think about it. So it's something you can start today is thinking about what does that look like? What would it take? And that's how you set yourself up for success. So I think that's a beautiful one thing. It's an amazing overarching, and we share this, as a coach, I don't want to say I don't like goals. Goals are great. I don't like resolutions, and I don't like, it's part of what I do in supporting my clients is we make sure we're setting it up for success. They'll say, oh no, I'm just going to cook, on plan now. Well, no. Like, let's start with, what are you going to make? What's the grocery list? When are you going to shop? All these parts and pieces. And that's where you're taking
So what's in your house?
Yeah,
exactly. If you open up your pantry, do you have a whole bunch of processed food sitting there?
Right.
Well, if you do, then you're probably not going to be successful with the goal of not eating processed food or reducing it at least. It's just going to be much harder.
Yeah. So start as that beginning of the setup would be, pantry clean out time and, really figuring out what that looks like. And I love what you said back to the systems guy, allows you to create that system for success.
That's right. And don't beat yourself up if you have these moments where things don't go just perfect. It's not about the things going perfect. It's about having the system in place that you can fall back on to get back in the swing of things.
I love it. Every one day better or one thing better is moving you in the right direction. So for people who listen on the go, on that nice country drive to work, if they're lucky enough to have that, where can listeners find you?
The best place is my website. It's www.healthundercontrol.com. They can also send me an email, mark@healthundercontrol.com as well too.
Wonderful. Mark, thank you so much. You have shared some amazing gold with us today.
Well, thank you, Julie. Thank you so much for having me on this. The work you're doing here is fantastic. And I wish you years and years of success.
Thank you so much. Right back at you. For everyone listening, remember you can get the show notes and transcripts by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.